Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome back to the FIDE Candidates in 2024 that's going on now in Toronto in Canada. We're now in the round 9 already of this thrilling chess tournament, and before the round 9, after 8 rounds, the leaders of this top event were the grandmasters Jan Nepomniachtchi and Gukesh. Both of them had so far 5 points. Hikaru Nakamura and Ramesh Pragnana were on the 3rd and 4th place with 4.5 points. Today we had great matches, very important matches. First important match was of course Gukesh versus Ramesh Pragnana. The game ended with a draw, and also Alireza Firouzja against Jan Nepomniachtchi also ended with a draw, which basically gave Hikaru Nakamura a huge chance, maybe with the win against Vidit Santosh Gujrathi, to catch up really with the leaders to maybe even share the first place. So big opportunity for Naka, a very important game that we'll see now. We have here Vidit Santosh Gujrathi against Hikaru Nakamura, in my opinion, really the most important game from the round 9. So let's see now what happened. In my opinion, it was really a spectacular chess game. So with the white pieces, Vidit opened here with move e4. Naka's response was e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, the Italian opening. We have knight to f6, 2 knights defense, and now we have the modern bishop's variation with the move d3, h6, preventing in some lines bishop to g5 to get pinned here by the bishop. And now after move c3, d6 by Nakamura, and now after castling we have now a very interesting line here by black. The move g5 has been played in chess history. I would not say it's an inaccuracy mistake or something, but sometimes when you advance the pawn too much, you could leave also weaknesses behind, especially when we watch now the f5 weakness. It's of course a clear target for white. White wants to basically reroute the knight somehow, maybe, I don't know, rook to e1, knight to d2, knight to f1, knight to e3, and then knight to f5 to cement the position, because okay, you have a space advantage, but you have many structural weaknesses. Also, what we should notice that in some lines even the h6 pawn can be attacked, and obviously also the h5 square is a little bit weak. So a risky line by Hikaru, but in my opinion a natural choice, I would say, because he has to win his game in order, as I said, to catch up with the leaders of this amazing chess tournament. Here Vidit Santosh Gujrathi keeps it cool, plays normal development. Knight to d2 is saying, okay, show me what you got, show me what you have prepared in this very risky line. We have bishop to g7, bishop to b3, a5 by Hikaru, and now here we have a4, not allowing expansions here by black on the queen side. In some lines also maybe with the potential a4 move. We have here kingside castling, and now knight to c4. We have bishop to e6. Good move here by Hikaru Nakamura, competing against this knight on against this bishop on b3 immediately, and also against this knight. The problem here a little bit for white is that you would love to play maybe this maneuver that we have talked about in the beginning with knight to e3, and you would love to maybe cement the position around the square f5. But if you do so, then there is this risky line for white, d5, and here black would even equalize the game in early stage of the opening with d5. Black is breaking and entering already. I'm not saying like white is losing or something, but I think this is a direct attack of the center, with great opportunities also for black. E takes d5, we can trade off many pieces, the queen gets centralized, and I think black is out of this tactical mess in an early stage of the opening. So as I said, that's why after bishop to e6, Vidit plays the correct move, rook to e1, because now a potential d5 move would not make sense, because the e5 is now unprotected, so there are some issues here against the pawn on e5. So that's why for rook to e1, Hikaru keeps it also calm with rook to e8. We have now the move h3, preventing also in some lines moves like g4, queen to d7 by Hikaru. In some lines, maybe if possible even sack the bishop for 2 pawns, and maybe the queen gets here, maybe knight to h5, knight to f4. So slowly but surely here Hikaru Nakamura builds an amazing attacking formation against white king. But again, I liked here Vidit's game. He played it very calm, bishop to d2. What I like that he didn't play bishop to e3. This move would of course take the natural square for the knight, because in some lines, as we have talked about, knight to e3 could happen, and then knight to f5. So that's why bishop to d2 keeps the bishop very flexible on both diagonals. I'm telling you this, and I've also I'm telling this is a very important move. You see in the later stage of the game, because this bishop is controlling the potential knight to b4 move, but also the potential knight to f4 move. So this bishop is waiting both of these knights to come. So as I said in the beginning, you cannot see it immediately, but I think bishop to d2 was a very, very beautiful move here by Vidit Santosh Gujrathi. Rook from a to d8. Hikaru continues, of course, normal development. We have queen to c2, and now we have a new move, a theoretical novelty in chess history. Knight to h5 has been played in one game, in which, believe me or not, Black won the game. Especially because of the potential knight to f4 outpost. But b6 also perfectly fine here by Hikaru Nakamura. We have bishop to a2, knight to h5, going again for the f4 square, and now knight to e3. Here again, Vidit goes for the f5 square. We have now bishop takes a2, rook takes a2, knight to e7. Hikaru is controlling now the f5 square, says Vidit, you're not going there. This is my main weakness. I have to protect it. Here we have now, after knight to e7, I would say a critical moment of the game, in which okay, it seems so that Hikaru played now really the optimal moves after the risky line g5. But you see how problematic this line is, because I think in this particular moment, Vidit had a great chance. I'm not saying again, great chance to win the game immediately, but he had a great chance to cause really positional and tactical problems now in Black's position. Here, what I think Vidit should have played is immediately b4. b4, because you left simply the defense of the b4 square, and now after a takes b4, c takes b4, something like d5 could happen, as we have talked about also in the middle game stage. d5 is a plan for Black to break and enter somehow in the center, but now we simply get out. We get out of the potential d4 move that could happen, and for instance, after d takes e4, d takes e4, look at this position now. White will eventually create a passer on the a file. White will simply push a5, has now the supported pass pawn with the bishop. That's what I liked really about this move, bishop to d2. Very flexible move. The bishop is also controlling the f4 square, and now there are many good ideas here for White. Rook to c1, for instance, hitting the c7 backward pawn, pushing the pawn further. Still, knight to e3, knight to f5 in some lines is working. For instance, if this knight leaves the protection of the f5 square, I would say here in this particular position, many position problems for Black. Unfortunately for Vidit, he didn't play that immediately. He went for the central breakthrough with the move d4. I would say a tiny little inaccuracy, because after e takes d4 and c takes d4, you actually liberated your opponent's dark square bishop. The dark square bishop was stuck, for instance, in this line. C takes b1, c takes b4, as we have talked about. Look at this. The bishop on g7 is locked by its own pawn. It cannot get into the game at all. But now after move d4, you basically invited your opponent's piece into the game. Still, it's an equal position. Nothing lost also for White, but I think the b4 goal was very important here for Vidit Santosh Gujrathi. And now Hikaru continues the pressure in the center. He says d5, I'm not going to tolerate your central control with both of these pawns. We have now e5. You have to advance it, because if you play e takes d5, knight to d5 leaves you an isolated d-pawn, which would be, of course, a long-term weakness, a strategic disadvantage then here for White. So that's why after move d5, e5 played by Vidit Santosh Gujrathi, and you see now Hikaru managed somehow finally to defend this position around the square f5, managed somehow to get a nice defensive structure. We have rook to c8. Hikaru is trying now to play c5, undermining the small pawn chain. d4, e5. He's trying to deflect this pawn from the defense of the e5 pawn, and then simply go against the e5 pawn with many minor pieces. We have rook to a3. We have now the move c5, and then now another inaccuracy here by Vidit. He plays now the move d takes e5. This wasn't good. Here again, Vidit had a great chance with knight to g4. Knight to g4 is important. For instance, if you play c takes d4, okay, you can even sacrifice temporarily the pawn, but you hide with your queen here to d3, and the queen cannot be attacked anymore with any of these pieces by Black. Maybe knight to c6 can be played with the move, with the preparation to play knight to b4, but you play simply rook to b3 and go for the b6 pawn. Let's see options. For instance, you try knight to f4. That's what I've talked about. The bishop on d2 is controlling this square and also controlling this square. Now bishop to f4, g takes f4, you take, maybe knight to b4, we get the queen here to d2, and I think white is much better. This is a weakness, this is a very advanced pawn in some lines. We can even break and enter with the move e6, queen to f4 is going to happen. Not really a pleasant game here for black. Also knight takes h6 in some lines is possible, so here not a good continuation. For instance, you try knight to b4 after rook to b3, even rook sacrifice is possible, believe me or not, because after a takes b4, knight to d4, still you're controlling, of course, the f4 square. Maybe you try something like queen to a4, b3, the queen retreats, e6, for instance, is possible, takes, and now here the queen comes on g6. If you retreat somewhere, knight to f6, the fork against the queen, and because you cannot take with the bishop. So as I said, very unpleasant game for black after potential knight to g4, because you can allow simply this move c takes d4 and you go with the queen, and this bishop is controlling simply too much. e6 in some lines, as we saw, is possible. Rook to b3 targeting this pawn. So again, too many possibilities, but just for white, again, black would be simply on the defensive side. So after c5, as we said, d takes c5, an inaccuracy here by Vidit Santosh Gujrathi, but now Hikaru also plays, I think, his first inaccuracy in the game. He plays now rook takes c5. Seems tempting, seems logical, of course. You get the rook into the game, you take the pawn, and you get an extra tempo. Who wouldn't play that, of course? But the issue about this move is that actually, after rook to c5, you're vulnerable to the move b4. You remember when we have analyzed the game in the beginning, b4 was the basic strategic goal in the first place for Vidit Santosh Gujrathi, but now it's even more aggressive because the rook is exposed here on c5. A better choice for Hikaru would have been here to move knight to f4. Still, of course, white cannot take because of the tensions on the c file. The rook is targeting the queen. Then probably white would have continued with rook to b3, and after queen to a4, rook takes b6. The queens could be off the board. I'm showing you just now a stockfish line. That's the line that's the stockfish engine is suggesting here. What should white and black do? Knight to d3, then you go rook to d1, rook to c5, bishop to e3, and then rook to d3 leads into after a4 an equal game. Both players have the same material, and I would say this is pretty solid draw now for both sides. But after rook to c5, as I said, seems tempting. I'm not sure how many of us wouldn't even play this move, but now queen to d1, Vidit gets out of this mess. Now Hikaru plays the move knight to f4, but now finally b4. The move that Vidit could have played earlier with even a better position. Now b4 is not so, I would say, obvious what's going on now on the board. In the previous line, as we saw, white could have created the pass pawn. Now it's not so obvious because now there are some tactical problems in the position. After move b4, what black could do, and Hikaru did not play, would have been maybe a takes b4, but now we play bishop to b4, rook retreats, we take out the knight, rook to e7, we attack the pawn, you defend the pawn, and now with knight to f5, again, white has access to the f5 square, d6 is weak, this one is weak. Rook to knight to the d4 in some lines could happen, attacking further the rook. So a really unpleasant position again here to handle for black. So that's why for b4 we have rook to c8 by Hikaru Nakamura. Now Vidit took, and after b takes a5 and bishop to a5 here in this line, Vidit Santosh Gujrathi grabbed the pawn, and not a good position anymore for Hikaru Nakamura. We have here knight to c6. Of course, Vidit retreats with bishop to c3, and now Hikaru makes another mistake. Here, maybe there was an option of rook to d8, trying somehow to push the pawn further. Now knight to g4, you push bishop to d2, but still, I would say after bishop to f4, g takes f4, this is a weak pawn. This pawn is rolling. This pawn is supported by both of this knights. Rook very active, d3 weak. So, again, I would say white is much better. And that's exactly the line that, again, the stockfish engine is suggesting here for Hikaru Nakamura. But what Hikaru played, he played now knight takes e5, which is not so good because of a bishop to e5, bishop takes e5, knight to d5, liberates, of course, now the file for the rook. You have to play knight to d5, knight takes e5, and here, in this tactical sequence, white is simply up a pawn, but now comes actually the problem of the beginning of the opening. As we remember, Hikaru played h6 g5 in the beginning, and you see now when we watch also another element again in the game, not only the fact that white is up a pawn, when we watch the other element when it comes to king security, black is simply here, I think, almost losing, because there's this weakness, h6, f7 weak. I don't know, rook to f3 could happen. So many options. The queen is hanging, you lose. The queen is attacked, you lose a tempo because you have to move the queen. So here Hikaru didn't find the optimal square for the queen. Queen to e6 he played. He got even in front of the rook. But even if you play queen to d6, then we simply play this one. Rook from a to e3. You cannot take because of the tensions on the d file. You could maybe play queen to c5. But as I said, queen to h5. f7 weak, h6 weak. You don't have even time to pick up this one. You're running after queen to f7, knight to g6 into a checkmate sequence. So you cannot do anything here. It will be also game over. After knight to e5, queen to e6 by Hikaru, rook to d3, hitting the knight, knight to f4, rook to d6. Beautiful active play here by Vidit Santosh Gujrathi, and now obviously rook takes h6. I would say here from this point on, it's really game over here for Hikaru. But Hikaru tried to battle. He played now queen to b2. That's not the optimal move. I played. I didn't mark it well here. Queen to b2 is not a good move at all. It's big, but in any of these lines, I think black doesn't have any good options anymore. What should you do? For instance, here Vidit simply continues with the normal plan. Queen to d7 hits simply the f7 weakness. Queen to b3 by Hikaru. Hikaru is now trying desperately to defend the position. Even if you try maybe some tactics, I don't know, knight to e2, rook to e2, maybe queen takes e2. As we said, you're running into a checkmate after queen to f7. So nothing is working there. So here after queen to d7, queen to b3, queen to f5 by Hikaru, by Vidit. Hikaru tried knight to g6, and obviously here Vidit sacrificed the rook, and in this particular position Hikaru Nakamura resigned. What's the issue? Of course, after f takes g6, we simply play queen takes g6. Now we deliver a new check. After a couple more checks, we play a rook lift, and there's simply no good defense against a rook to h4. So not a pleasant position, of course, here for black. So Hikaru had a great chance, lost now this game. Again, I would not say this is game over here for Hikaru. Still, there are some chances, but he's now the full point behind behind Gukesh and Jan Nepomniachtchi. Praggnanandhaa is still on the third place with half point less than both of them. Hikaru is still in the game, but this was maybe even an unnecessary loss. He had now a good run, and I think risked too much simply today. You cannot win, I think, so many games in the candidates just in row. Here, I think he should have simply gone more for a draw and then activate him maybe with the white pieces, maybe play more aggressive with the white pieces. So, okay, for Hikaru fans, maybe this wasn't the optimal game. For Vidit Santosh Gujrathi fans, this was a beautiful game. We saw how risky it is to advance the pawn something in the Italian like this. So, really risky line here by Hikaru Nakamura. So, okay, but nothing is lost. Still, we have more rounds. Many great games we'll see for sure. So, the things are heating up for sure. So now we have derbies every day. Every point, every half of a point means something. So it will be, of course, a spectacular chess tournament for us to follow for sure. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. Interesting ideas, of course, in the Italian opening. If you want to see some other games that we have covered here on my YouTube chess channel from the candidates, here are some links of some games that we have analyzed before. And if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos. And what do we say in the end? Chess is the best of